Hello, I'm Stephen Lutz, and my intention is to share my journey with inoperable metastatic pancreatic cancer. This is stage 4 cancer. Shortly, let me introduce myself. I'm the founder and the CEO of a global church planting missionary organization called Harvesters Ministries. I'm an author. I'm a husband, father of 2 sons, and the grandfather of 3 wonderful young grandsons. I was recently diagnosed with incurable cancer. And I've decided to share my journey in this format for several reasons. Firstly, the idea, of course, is to update my many friends, family, colleagues, and those around the world who are praying for me in this forum so that I can share once instead of telling my story 1,000 times. It's difficult responding to everyone individually with all the information. So I'm hoping to use this forum as an update. But I also want to be an encouragement to other people facing trials and tribulations. Now, I'm a minister of the gospel. I was a pastor of a church before I became a missionary and before I started a missionary organization. And I want to share my story about facing cancer from a Christian perspective. We're often told to practice what we preach. And I fully intend to do that, to live through this, whatever the end might be, as someone of faith. And I want to share that journey with you, and I hope it's going to encourage you. I hope that in all of this, I can mean something to you too. I know that when you receive bad news, medical bad news particularly, it's natural to dive into Google and to ChatGPT and do research. It's common to go searching on YouTube for information, and there's good and bad information, and to see what others have experienced or are experiencing. I know that's exactly what I did. And most of what you find is very discouraging. Most of it gives you a very short time horizon and tells you the worst possible outcomes. The statistics are bad. Let's be realistic here. Pancreatic cancer is a killer. It has a bad record. It has a low survival rate. Few people get to live 5 years, even less 10 years. And so when you read that and you type in all your symptoms and your stats and whatever else is happening, you normally get a very bad picture. And the statistics are bad. We understand that. But I want to say my approach to this is there are statistics and then there is God. We do not live in a vacuum. We're not a statistic. And yes, while the probability is high that we are all going to face, those who are suffering with this illness are going to face a difficult time. And there's some of you who might be watching who are down this road and you know how hard it is. And I can't even imagine. I can only think of what lies ahead also for me. But God, I trust in Him. My wife Hanli and I are very realistic about what lies ahead. She's a former nurse and understands the medical side as well. But we're not going to just give up. We're not just going to lie down. We're going to give it our all. We're going to get the most out of our remaining time. And in the process, we will continue to minister as far as and long as we can. As long as my body allows me, I will stay in service to God as a minister. And in this process, I want to minister to you. It's easy when things are going fine to tell other people encouraging things. I always used to say to folks, don't just tell me when it's over and tell me the story is finished and I praise God for that. But tell me in the midst of your suffering what God means to you, what life means to you, how your faith is carrying you. And I hope to be able to do that in the coming months. So here's my story. I recently returned from the US, where we stay half the year, to Cape Town, South Africa. And I needed to go and see my doctor as I was having some issues, as I sometimes do. I've not been very well most of my life. And my glucose levels were too high, and I couldn't get them down with the meds I was using. My pulse was higher than it should be, and I was fatigued. I was just tired. So I went for blood tests, and 2 days later went off to see the doctor, and he prescribed some new insulin. It's the first time in a decade I've had to use insulin, and so that was weird because I'd lost a lot of weight over the long time intentionally, and it brought my glucose levels down, and suddenly they were elevated and we couldn't understand why. So he gave me some insulin. He did a heart sonar and then decided he needed to put me on a 24-hour EKG just to see. Nothing major there, just a little bit of elevated heart rate. And he found in my blood tests that my iron levels were low and I needed an iron infusion, which is a regular occurrence every 6 months. So after a long consult and lots of chatting, we eventually got down to just sitting down, checking the blood pressure, and he was prodding me and pushing and put his hand on my neck and started to feel, and then down towards the collar line and felt some swollen glands. And I could see in his face this worried him because he kept feeling and feeling. And eventually he said, these concern me and I won't rest until I know what's going on here. So he booked me into the hospital about 4 days later, and the idea was then to get the glucose, the iron infusion, and check my EKG and so on. And so on the Monday morning, I went into hospital and eventually did get my iron. Starts working about 2 days. My energy levels went up. Got the 24-hour monitor on my, my heart rate, and he ordered a CAT scan, CT scan. And the thing about the CT scan, of course, it doesn't lie. It just goes right and tells you what's going on. And so the next day, 10th of December, very recently, we received the news that no one wants to hear. There were nodules in both lungs. Tiny little things. The largest only 8 millimeters. But there were some old marks, but there was some that concerned the doctor. And there was also a mass in the tail of the pancreas. And obviously, it pointed to pancreatic cancer. Now, the problem was not just what was happening in the pancreas, which obviously in itself is a problem, but the fact is that there were marks on the lungs and the lymph nodes were swollen in my neck. And so they did a test called the CA19-9, and which normally the levels, you should be under 37. Mine was 780, which is elevated, but not as high as some people have. But it's not a prognostic test, but it is definitely an indication that something's going on. And so the next step was to 2 days later to do a biopsy. Cut it out. You can still see the plasters on there. It's almost healed. And through the biopsy came confirmation. Stage 4, metastatic, in other words, it has spread to other organs, pancreatic cancer. And obviously by now I'd been doing the research, and you realize immediately that of all the cancers, this is one of the worst. And the moment it spreads, The moment it has left the pancreas, you immediately know it's basically inoperable. He still consulted with a surgeon who came back and said, no, we're not operating. Usually they could, in this case, take the tail of the pancreas off. And if there was no metastasis, if there was no spread, that could be curative. But because of the metastasis and the fact that it's in the bloodstream, it's spreading to other organs, surgery was taken off the table. Mind-blowing news. Life-disrupting news. In a sense, everything goes on hold. Plans must be made and people must be informed and information must be gathered. Treatment has to be determined and, well, so much. And then treatment must start and then you hope it works. So much to do, so little time. The stats are against me. The clock is ticking. Wait. Slow down. Think and pray. And this is what I want to say to you. If you're watching this and you've just been diagnosed or you have a problem, wait, slow down, think and pray. One of the things that immediately happened was that both Huntley and I just received a peace that goes beyond understanding. No fear, no anxiety, just an awareness that there's so much to do. And so initially, with all these facts and stats in our minds, we realized that the time is extremely short. But yesterday, we went to the oncologist, and the news changed slightly in our favor. It was better than expected. So what she said was, we got this early. Because he felt the nodules or the lymph nodes swollen, it has not spread to the extent of turning yellow and all the other stuff, and it's not in the liver yet. And even though it is spread, the nodules are small, and so it's pretty early for a pancreatic cancer diagnosis. Most people only get caught later. The fact that it's in the tail and not in the head of the pancreas, not close to the bile ducts and so on, for instance, is a good thing. The fact that it's not in the liver is a good thing. Chemo will probably be able to stop the growth and perhaps even shrink the tumor. And by doing so, will hold off many of the symptoms. It's not curative. It doesn't mean a huge extension of life expectancy, necessarily. But what it does promise is perhaps an extended time and opportunity to do things and get things right. And then possibly even extend the expectancy as well. So the chemo that they use has a good record. But I'd like to remind you today that we are all mortal. We just don't have a date. And when you get a cancer diagnosis, it sort of brings an awareness that that date is closer than you think. But bad news doesn't just come from a doctor. Bad news could come through a telephone line saying, are you the parent of, or this is about to happen, or something bad has happened. So bad news can change our life at any moment, and life is short. And so thinking about that, we need to take some things into consideration. Like, what's important to you? What are the things that really matter? And are you really doing those things now? Or does it take a diagnosis like this to make you focus on the things that are important? We should all be living our lives to the fullest and to the best every day. We should all be ready to go in a moment. The diagnosis from the oncologist meant that life could be almost normal for a little longer than we thought. It all depends, of course, how my body handles the the chemo. And so today's Friday, and on Monday, a surgeon will fit a port that they'll use to put the chemo in. And hopefully I'll only be in hospital just for the day and then out. And then we're starting chemo on with pills for 2 weeks, just for the first 2 weeks, which will give me some time to do some stuff I've just got to do. And then around about the 15th of January, we'll start with the intravenous chemo. Excuse me, burping is one of the symptoms I have, and that's irritating. And then we'll have chemo every second week. After 3 months, we'll do scans and tests to see if there's improvement. And then another 3 months, we'll do the same tests. And at that stage, decide whether it's worthwhile going just down to pills, and which will make me more mobile, as if things improve. So let me finish with this. Honey and I are fine. We are calm. I have no fear. We face this with faith, with friends, and with prayer. And I'd love to call on you to join us in prayer. Please subscribe to this channel. Get the news from time to time of how we're doing through the good times and possibly some of the bad times that lie ahead. And I'd like to keep you informed, but at the same time use this forum to encourage those who are suffering. I'd like to look at life and death in the perspectives of eternity. What comes later? What comes next? I'd like this to be a forum that encourages others going through difficult times. I'd like to invite you to join me on my journey, and I hope I can be a blessing to you. Until the next time, God bless you.
Jesus, I will sing your praises, declare them in